It's that time again, team. Time for another flip through. As per my last flip through videos, I'm going to be talking about what worked well for me and what didn't so much, which will likely make this video a little bit on the longer side. I won't be talking in depth about every single page, but there certainly will be some that I have some thoughts on. So starting at the start with this notebook in general, I did quite like using the Dingbats. Some of the things in particular that I did like about it was the size, so the fact that there were 28 spaces across on each page, which I particularly appreciated when it came to setting up my monthly logs, as I was really nicely able to fit 4 columns of boxes across, while not compromising on the size of those boxes. A couple things I didn't like so much about this journal was probably the yellowness of the pages, the fact that the page numbers kind of encroached on the space that you had on the page. I'll show you what I mean when we actually turn to a page. And the fact that my bookmarks fell out, which was a bit of a shame. I don't usually use the bookmarks very often, but that was still kind of a bummer. Flipping on into it though. On the first page of this journal, you actually have some information about the Great Barrier Reef. And as much as I liked having it in there, I think I would have preferred it to be on a separate removable piece of paper, because I didn't want that to be the first thing that I looked at when I opened my journal. As a teacher, I thought it was more necessary to have my school timetable here. For my start of journal setup, I wanted to make it quite neutral, so outside of the colour that's on my timetable, my colour palette for this was mainly tan, brown, black, and white. For all of the headings that I did as part of this, I used a brown paper bag that I just stuck to a piece of paper that I then put through my printer to print all of the titles. So after my name, I wanted to decorate this page, but I really wasn't sure on what I wanted to decorate it with. For this one, I just took one of those brown paper bags again and stuck it in and wrote this quote on here. I still have a long way to go, but I'm already so far from where I used to be, and I'm proud of that. I decided then to make this a space for any other quotes that I collected throughout the life of this journal. So there's a couple of those here. After this we have my keys, both for my colours and signifiers, and then the start of my index. I don't really use my index very much, and I didn't put an awful load of collections in here because I do have my long-term collections bullet journal. So in terms of the index, it really just has the page numbers for each month. So like I mentioned before, you can see that the page numbers on these pages actually take up that corner dot, which was something that kind of bothered me throughout the life of this journal. In terms of my 20 before 2020, I liked this page, I just never ended up figuring out what I wanted to do with these last 3 boxes. The goals and milestones page I like the idea of, but I don't think I utilised it the best way that I could. Year at a glance and future log both worked well, so I have used those again in my 2020 journal. Countdown and term schedule. So the countdown page in particular I reserve for term 3 and 4, mostly because that's when it really starts to sink in that we don't have that much time with our senior classes left. The term schedule, I love this page, I always use it in my journals, but I haven't put it in my 2020 journal because I now have a teacher planner. After this we have my Tom tracker, and as you can see, kind of fell off with using this one, and that's why I haven't included it in 2020. So my bills tracker was another page that I do like, I just never really came back to check in with it. I don't think it's really information that I need to have in my bullet journal because I keep all of my money and budgeting stuff digitally, but it was kind of nice to have a visual representation of this. Similar idea for my savings, I'm not even sure if this one's actually up to date, but I did like having it in my journal. So having a look at my monthly challenges in particular, this was something that I was trying for the second time in this journal. I'd tried it in the journal that I used for the first half of 2019 and wasn't really that successful with it. But I was certainly more successful with it in the second half of the year, even though I didn't actually end up doing any monthly challenges for November or December. My weekly challenge list was all about making new weekly spreads. And this was just because I was getting a little bit bored with the weekly spreads that I was doing, so I wanted to set myself some challenges or restrictions in the new weeklies that I was setting up. So things like only using 1 pen, only using washi or stickers, only spending 5 minutes on a weekly, that kind of stuff. Obviously, I didn't carry this out until the very end of the year, but I did enjoy my time that I spent doing these. We have my to consume and to buy lists. Nothing against these, I've just moved them into my collections bullet journal, so I don't have them in my 2020 journal. Ideal week and self-care ideas. Again, this one's more of a reference page, so probably should get moved to my collections journal. And, well, I mean, this one kind of is a reference page as well, so same idea. Notes to self, nothing against this. I haven't included one of these in my start of journal setup for my 2020 journal, but that's only because I want to incorporate more of these notes pages in my monthly setups. I do need to make sure at some point that I transfer these ideas to somewhere I'm actually going to keep them. That's the end of my start of journal setup though, and now we're into my monthlies. So July was first, and for that one I had a travel theme. I really enjoyed experimenting with new themes in the second half of 2019. It was fun getting to try new doodles and colour palettes and all of that kind of stuff. So we have my splash page, my monthly log, which I loved using calendar style monthlies in this journal, because again, as I mentioned, there's 28 squares across, which means you can really nicely fit 4 columns of squares down. So each of these squares are 7 by 7, or 3.5 centimeters by 3.5 centimeters. After the monthly log, we have the bucket lists, which was something that I tried to start using in this journal as well. They worked quite well up until November, where I got really busy, so didn't actually end up populating the bucket list. But I think it was fun just to set myself a few little intentions or fun things that I wanted to get done that month. This was also the journal where I started getting back into mood trackers, and mood trackers are always something that I love to put in my journal, even though I don't really have a lot of need for them. They're usually just the page that ends up looking the most creative in each monthly setup. We had my habits and steps trackers, which I put on these boarding pass tickets. Social media scheduler, my meal log, just that regular format that I have with 4 columns. As per usual, I had an interesting relationship with meal logs in the second half of 2019. My packing list and holiday to-do list, because I was going to Melbourne as part of my school holiday period. And my challenges page. So we had the health challenge and the money challenge. In future months I condensed this down to 1 page because I didn't really feel like you needed a full spread for it, but I did find that I was way more successful with these having individual trackers for them rather than putting them on my habit tracker. And then we're on to my weekly logs for this month. So the challenge that I had for this one was a 1 pen weekly. The biggest qualm that I probably have with this weekly was that I didn't use a ruler, which means that this central line and these horizontal lines here aren't as straight as I'd usually like them. You guys know, I love my ruler. I love straight lines. For this one, I did like having my events and tasks split into these 2 columns, where I had everything kind of work or chore related and everything more personal on this side. I liked having a long-running to-do list, but I didn't like the fact that this spacing is too small. I would have liked to have a couple of extra columns, I think. This section here I think was for top tasks in each of these different areas of my life, and although I have nothing against it, it obviously didn't get utilized very well. This section here was for just some notes or journaling, which I did at the end of the week because I didn't have anything else to put in this space. After this we had my washi tape only weekly. Again, I like the idea of having a space for a long-running checklist, and I appreciated that it was certainly different to what I usually do. I love this washi tape. This is my favourite set of washi tape. I probably wouldn't go back to a layout like this though. After this one, we have what was my attempted sticker-only weekly, but as you can see, didn't quite work out. When I went to put down these to-do list stickers, I put this one a little higher than that one, so all of these were off kilter. I'm not good with stickers, but I did retry this one over here, and I don't really like it, honestly. I don't like the amount of space that I had for each day. I felt, especially in the Tuesday and Friday ones, very tight. I did like this rainbow banner at the top though, I thought that was cute, but not for me. Onto the 5-minute weekly. Nothing against this one, would always prefer to have space for a long-running to-do list though. There are just tasks that I have each week that don't need to get done on specific days, and I'd rather just have them in a long-running to-do list rather than actually assigned to a day. And then we were into August. So my August theme was back to school. I had a rainbow color palette, and I wanted to have all of the decorations for that month themed around going back to school. So we had my cover page, my monthly log, again with a calendar layout. I really loved all the little apples that I had for the numbers for the month. These ones were super easy to do, just 2 little circles of red, a little line of brown, and a little kind of flick of green. For my bucket list and my habit tracker over the page, I made this kind of notice board thing by printing off a piece of paper with the corkboard pattern, and then sticking these little post-it notes on top, which made it look like little notices. I thought this one was a lot of fun. For my mood tracker, we had blobs of paint, again another fun spread. Habit tracker, little notice board. My steps tracker with the different lengths of the pencil representing the thousands of steps. So 1 centimeter being 1,000 steps, 2 centimeters, 2,000 steps, etc. I love the way this one turned out. I thought it was really cute. My social media scheduler as per usual, and then my condensed challenge page, so 1 page rather than a spread. Then we had my meal log, again just the same 4 columns. And onto my weeklies. So this weekly in particular, the challenge was to recreate an old spread. So this was the spread that I used to use pretty much exclusively when I first started bullet journaling. So we'd always have my events list on 1 page here, and then a Dutch door in the middle, one of the folded Dutch doors. And then a page over here for notes and my timetable. An interesting but sad coincidence for this spread was that this was also the week that my Uncle Ken died. And the spread that I was recreating in particular for this one, from my first bullet journal, was the week that his wife, my Auntie Bron, died. This weekly layout in particular though, I really do love. I've always enjoyed using this one. Having the events section and then the running to-do list section over here where I can just jot things down, and then also having a essentially build as you go task list, where each day I just put a header, then write down what I need to do. Come the end of the day, I put the header for the next day. I've always really enjoyed using this style. Flipping over, we had my left-handed weekly, which I think I did a pretty good job considering how bad I am with my left hand. You can see that obviously the lines are certainly not straight, which does bother me a lot, and the lettering for each of the headers, not so great. This layout in particular, I love having the long-running to-do list. I felt that I did need a bit more space in each of these columns though. They're 7 squares across, and usually at a minimum I like to have 8. After this I started writing some notes about the bullet journal method. Obviously didn't get very far with that. And then we have the weekly where I was using colours I hate. Well, colour I don't like. I did decide only to use I think 1 or 2 colours in this. Maybe 2, maybe just 1. The colour is not my favourite for sure, but I don't mind the layout. This style of running to-do list in particular I do quite like, having the initials for each day of the week, and then just the to-do list down the side here. Then you can check off which day you actually did work on and then did complete those tasks. Same idea as that last weekly though, there are only 7 boxes across for each of these sections at the top, and I do prefer to have 8. After this we have my highlighter only spread, and I really wish I had have used my mild liners for this. I think it would have been more enjoyable having those colours than these kind of very faded pastel kind of ones. Don't mind the layout, not really my favourite. I'd probably only use this one again if I was really pinched for time and just wanted to rule something up really quickly. Then we had my 1-page weekly. This one in particular was a little interesting to use because usually I only do 1-page weeklies when I'm on my holiday break, so I don't have a lot going on. This one, however, I was using in the middle of a term, so towards the end of the week I certainly was feeling a little pinched for space. And then we're on to September. This was probably one of the favourite themes that I had in my journal, and the theme for this one was space. So we're thinking planets and rockets and stars, especially stars. I love drawing stars. We had my splash page, another calendar layout monthly log, what is probably my favourite spread in this journal, which is my September bucket list and mood tracker. This took forever to draw out, but I love the way it turned out. On this one in particular, I love all the little doodles around each of my bucket list items. So our little rockets and UFOs and satellites. I just thought it was really cute. After this one we have my habits and steps trackers. For this habit tracker in particular, I love the way it looks and I would certainly use this one again. Something that was irritating though was when I'd use the wrong colour to fill in a box and I'd have to go and cut out a tiny piece of paper to stick it over the top. So this one in particular is one of those. I think I coloured it in blue, which is kind of hard to go over with a yellow pen. There was another one on here that I did as well. Let's see if I can feel for it. There we go. This one as well. That's got a little piece of paper that's stuck over the top. As you can tell, it's hard even for me to find where those are. So it's a very good way to cover your mistakes. For my steps tracker, I remember not drawing this circle very well. I tried to freehand it, and that's why there's this kind of blob of black around it. I learnt my lesson though, don't try and trick yourself into thinking you can draw freehand circles. I really liked this steps tracker as well. Regular meal log, 4 columns. Social media scheduler and challenge pages. Obviously this challenge didn't go so well. But hey, I tried. Gratitude log. Yep, that one went well as well. So come the end of that month, I just wrote myself a note saying, classic Jess. Nothing against this page. I just think that during this time of my life, it was a bit too much to ask for myself. And on to the weeklies. This is where I started to fall off from doing those weekly challenges. But this one in particular, I wanted to make it tie in with my theme. Nothing hugely against this spread. I don't really like the fact that the spacing I have for Sunday is bigger than I have for any other day of the week. And I didn't really like that I could only fit up to Friday in this section. Obviously, I still had things to do on Saturday and Sunday. But I do like the decoration. That's only because I'm a sucker for stars. After this we had Te Wiki o Te Reo Māori, so Māori Language Week. I did really like this layout, actually enough that I used it again I think in October. It's got all the elements that I really like to have, so a section for each day of the week, and the long running to-do list. I also appreciated having the top 3 tasks section here. After this we have a time tracking weekly, which as you can see I didn't really use. Nothing against this spread, if anything I think it's probably that idea of having too small an amount of space for each of these columns. As I said, I like to have at least 8 boxes across. I do think it's really pretty though, I do like the way it looks, it just didn't get used. After this I have one of the only collections that I have in this journal, which was some of my results from the 16 personalities quiz. So just some notes about that. This one in particular I find really satisfying to look at. And then we have the weekly that Vogel made for me. Although this isn't a weekly that I would make for myself anytime soon, this one in particular does have some good memories attached to it. Like Wednesday. And then we are on to October. My theme for October was Breast Cancer Awareness Month. This was also the month that I did the Month of Planning with Me series, which was a lot of fun. So we have my cover page with the pink ribbon, another calendar style monthly log, my bucket list and holiday to-do list. This was the last month that the bucket list kind of worked. As I mentioned, in November I got really busy with my friend's bachelorette and then her wedding and the end of school and ya. So that one didn't really get used. But back to this one. My holiday to-do list. and then my Dutch door trackers, which I mainly did because I didn't want to have to do these panels on every single page. So habits and steps trackers, again, a layout that is tried and true, one that I really like and will certainly use again. Instagram and YouTube, so this one replaced my regular social media spread, just because I was doing a video for each day. My monthly challenge page, which you can see active minutes went super well. If you watched a month of planning with me, you'll remember that one. My one word a day page. I don't do these ones often, but I do enjoy them when I do make them. My meal log, 4 columns, and into my weeklies. So as I mentioned before, when I'm on holidays, I do tend to use 1-page weeklies, just because I don't have as much going on. So we have the first week of my holidays and the second. Of the 2 layouts, this one's probably the one I like more. Again, it has the running to-do list. We have this layout that had a little Dutch door, which in terms of getting things done, I really do feel I used this one well. I didn't so much use this section very well. In this section it was my successes, challenges, and intentions section. I don't think I gave myself enough room to really write things down. For this weekly, I took the parts that worked, so those boxes for each day of the week, and also included my ever-loved long-running to-do list. This was my Term 4 timeline, which, outside of the initial setup, I didn't really use, but I do certainly like the way it looks. This was really just so that I could see the entire term at a glance, and all of the things that were coming up, all of the things that I had due, all the things I needed to do, more specifically related to school. Here's the recreation of that weekly we had back in September. Again, this one worked quite well for me. Boxes for each day of the week, good amount of space, long-running to-do list. It's good when you start to realize what you enjoy in a weekly. And then after this we had November. So for November, my theme was butterflies, even though initially I wanted it to be fairies, but then I realized I couldn't draw people. I did really enjoy the colour palette for this month. So we have my splash page, calendar style monthly log. The thing I don't like about this one is the thickness of these lines, in the sense that I don't think they're thick enough. For this month I was using a new M-size Pitt Artist pen, and when they're new they're a little bit thinner because they're less blunt. Onto the bucket list that didn't really work. I ended up writing both of these things in after the month was over. Mood tracker, which although it was kind of a mission to draw out, I do still quite like it. My trackers. So for my trackers in November, I decided to condense them all down onto one spread. So we had habits, steps, and fluid intake, Instagram, YouTube, and my challenges. Obviously, didn't really set myself genuine challenges, but I did try not to die, and I did end up losing weight. Even if it was only a little bit. Meal log. So in November, I was trying to apply some of the things that I'd spoken to my dietitian about. So things like how hungry I was before and after a meal, and how overall healthy that meal was, or snack, or whatever I was eating. But obviously, as I mentioned before as well, November was really busy for me, and trying to put that added pressure on myself did not work out. You can see I got to the 7th and then kind of stopped recording things and then tried to fill things in on the 9th. It just didn't work out. And that's okay. Sometimes things just don't work out in our journals. I also gave myself space to write a to-do list for term 4 so that once reports were over, I had things to move on with. And then we were on to my weeklies. So for November, I was trying what I was calling build as you go weeklies, where, as I mentioned before, you just put a heading for the day, then write down everything you need to do, and at the end of the day, you put the heading for the next day, and so on and so forth. Things that I liked about this were the fact that there's no real wasted space, and because at this time in particular, I was kind of worried about fitting December in this journal, that was certainly something that I needed. Things I didn't like though is that there's no space to write down tasks and events that are coming up. Obviously I can use my monthly log for the events, but if it's Monday and I have something that I know I need to do on Thursday, I essentially just have to remember it until I come to write my Thursday list. I didn't mind giving it a go though, and I do like the way it looks, so there's at least that. Obviously when it came to the 28th of November, I'd had enough and I just didn't fill out the last few days. And then we are into December, and my theme for December was cocktails. For this one in particular, I wanted to use bright colours because December is the start of summer for New Zealand. So we have my splash page, calendar style monthly log, my holiday to-do list, which obviously got so much use considering nothing is checked off, my mood tracker, which again is probably one of my favourite types of spreads, my habits and steps trackers, which are a style that I've used previously and is a style that I like, my social media page, which because I was doing Vlogmas did need a bigger section for YouTube, my drink or draw challenge, which sadly I didn't get as many of these done as I would have liked to do. I still have an intention to come back and try these different cocktails though. My meal log, which took a different form in December, where I tried to do it in the form of a calendar layout. I actually found that having it in this style made me more inclined to fill it out. Not too sure why that is, it might just be because it was something a little bit different. Though I'm not sure it's going to be a style I use again, because I do like to see all of my meals of one type together. So like I do with the 4-column version where I have breakfast, lunch, dinner, and snacks. And then we're into the weeklies. It was really nice to come back to more structured weeklies. For this week in particular, I decided to put the first on here as well. So we had Sunday and then an entire week. Obviously, if I was to do this one again, one of those boxes would probably end up being a journaling or a notes space. But I did like that this weekly in particular had a space for the events, a space for day-specific tasks, and a space for a running to-do list. Week 50 was the first week of my holidays, so I was intending on this one just being a one-page weekly, but obviously I had enough to do that it spilled over to this one. Nothing particularly wrong with this one, though I do think I prefer to have things either a little bit more decorative or a little bit more structured. Week 51, the second to last week in this journal. This one I really liked having the little Dutch door. Originally it wasn't stuck together, but when I realised I wasn't going to use the back side of the page, I just stuck it together with double-sided tape. For this weekly, I didn't really appreciate the wasted space in this section, so when it came to the next week, I actually stuck my Dutch door down. I really liked this layout. I thought it was quite cute and really functional. But of course around Christmas time, life gets crazy, so I didn't really end up using it the way that I probably would have if it was during a school term. After this, we just have some blank pages that never really ended up getting filled. I was going to save them for an end of year review, but because I had my power sheets, and also because I got lazy, I just didn't end up doing it. I do have some Christmas cards stuck in the back here, so some from my students and some from my colleagues. Some gratitude notes from my students that they did as part of the school's gratitude week. My invitation to Rachel and Jason's wedding. A little list of things that you should include in a day of bag for your wedding. And then a planning space for my next bullet journal. So some thoughts that I had, pages that I wanted to include, and things that I wasn't going to include and why. Back in July, I also set myself up some review pages, because I really wanted to get back into doing monthly reviews. However, these didn't really get used at all. So July, as you can see, wasn't filled in completely. August's, the bit was filled in, not really. September, much the same. October, barely anything. November, I didn't even colour in. And the same for December. After that one, we have my pen test page with all of my scribblings for like when my pen was running out. So irritating. We have my grid spacing cheat sheet up here, a little something I did when I was looking at all of my monthly splash pages, and then just some general scribbling. In the back here we have all of these post-it notes that I used when I was doing some kind of colouring, I think, and I wanted to protect certain sections of my journal. They never really ended up getting used. And then we just have some spare paper in the back here. Although there were a lot of spreads in this journal that didn't really work out, or didn't get filled in, or just didn't get used to the best of their abilities because of the time of my life, I do always appreciate how much I learn when going through an entire of a journal. Learning about the spreads that do and don't work for me, the things I do and don't like, and essentially just what I need from my journal at any given time. As I mentioned, my favourite spread from this journal was probably my September bucket list and mood tracker pages. I'd love to hear about what your favourite pages were from your 2019 bullet journal. Or if you had one, what your favourite page was from mine. Thank you so much for watching, team. If you liked today's video, please do make sure to give it a big thumbs up. And if you wanted to see more from me, feel free to go check out one of my other videos. Until next time, bye!